Good afternoon and welcome to Libertarian Counterpoint Podcast. We are coming at you on November 20th of 2020, a few weeks after the election. A lot of craziness still going on, uncertainty, a little bit of uncertainty who won. I think most people are starting to get set on the idea that Biden has won. But anyways, but Biden winning means that we have to start looking forward to what that actually means as far as a plan of where the country is going. But before we get into that, let me introduce you to our panel. In our upper left-hand corner, we have Tim Evert, our Screaming Eagle of Freedom. He is a pilot in the state of California. In our right-hand corner, we have Tim the Word Brathwaite. Last word.
Leon the Word Brathwaite.
Leon. Excuse me, Leon the Word Brathwaite. Sorry about that.
Yes, sir. You better be careful. I could get offended by that. Seriously.
Yeah, I get a lot of words out of no matter what. Anyway,
it's
Leon the Word Brathwaite.
Jay. Leon is prejudiced against Irish and Irish names like Timothy.
Yeah, why so much hate, Leon? Just go with the flow.
I'm only prejudiced against the name when it does not belong to me.
Oh, I see. I see. Now that's a type of prejudice because you only like one name.
Yeah, that's
right.
You don't like any other name.
Yes, I discriminate a lot in that regard. Yes.
You are very narrow-minded, Leon. One name out of the whole gospel. Anyway, our last word in Liberty, and he's a retired engineer from the state of California. And my name is Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host today. For whatever that's worth.
It's not much.
Yes. Are you sure? Are you sure that's your name? Are you sure? Huh?
Yeah, really.
Okay. Well, anyways, the thing I wanted to, the main topic we wanted to go over today is sort of where we're headed in a 4 years of Biden, and he recently had a press conference in what they call the Office of the President-elect, which I'm not sure if that's a real thing, but
it's not real. There's no such office. It's not real.
Yeah. So, anyways, he and Kamala had a press conference, and they gave about a 15-minute speech together about what the plan was going forward. So, sort of the Biden economic plan, I guess. And essentially, the theme of it was that we can come out of this stronger than we went in. And I'm going to kind of go through a list of topics, and we're just going to kind of jump around throughout the show on, maybe some of the issues with some of these topics. And so to start with, he mentioned that he had talked with industrial leaders, before he came up with this plan, and how they were all on board. Well, those industrial leaders were 5 CEOs of major companies and 5 union leaders. So right away you can tell, what the bias of this is. I mean, and we can get into that in a little bit. But then he talked about mandatory masking going forward in relation to COVID. He talked about getting the vaccines out to people fast, and it sounded like he was trying to take a lot of credit for that. And he also talked about funding states and localities that had been harmed by a lot of the government lockdown policy, otherwise kind of what we've heard of in other words as state bailouts, so that was one of the things he's for going forward. Talked about making the wealthy and corporations pay their fair share in taxes as we go forward. Certainly we've heard that cry quite a bit in the past from Democrats. And then he talked about weatherizing and retrofitting millions of homes and buildings. So that was another part of his plan. He talked about investing money in electric cars, charging stations, and green tech. He emphasized throughout the presentation creating union jobs. That ties back to that conversation with union leaders. Buy American was also a theme. Raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour throughout the country. So this was kind of, it's possible we may have missed something, but that's essentially the nuts and bolts of everything he was talking about in that conversation. And one funny thing was too, as he wrapped up, he said, refusal of Democrats and Republicans to cooperate with one another is not due to some mysterious force beyond our control. It's a conscious decision. It's a choice that we make. So he was trying to say that we need to we need to unify essentially behind him. but
you mean like the Democrats unified behind Trump?
Exactly. Yes. I mean, I just think
exactly.
the choice of Nancy Pelosi tearing apart Trump's speech behind him as he gave his, State of the Union speech last year.
Yes.
So I mean, it's funny how unification only works when, one person's side is in control. But anyways, this is the nuts and bolts of the speech. So, topics. Let's, I guess, get right at that. The idea that this whole plan was made from a discussion of CEOs and union leaders. The CEOs, by the way, Microsoft, Target, the Gap, and GM, and there was one other, I can't remember which one that was, but those were essentially the CEOs. The union leaders were, just the usual suspects of the biggest union.
Yeah. The usual violators. The one question that comes out of this so-called Biden plan is, who's going to pay for all of this crap? Who's going to pay for it? Now they want to bail out the states, okay? And really and truly, they want to bail out the blue states, New York, Illinois, California, who have gotten themselves in all kind of trouble from all their nice, wonderful, especially the environmental things, how they're going to change. They're going to create utopia here in California and utopia in Illinois and utopia in New York. And now they're in trouble. Now they want the federal government to bail them out. So who's going to pay for all of this? And they always want to tell us about this fair share. What is that? What exactly is fair? The top 1% of income earners pay about 30 to 40% of the income tax right now as we speak. And that is not fair, is what Joe Biden is trying to tell us now. Oh, wow.
Well, let's home in on, a few topics. So you mentioned their fair share. And so in California, they certainly have one of the highest tax rates in the country. And a lot of people are currently leaving California, and moving to other states. We've talked with Cal Exiters on this program, people who are essentially fleeing in U-Hauls from the state to preserve their wealth. Rich people as well, like Gene Simmons recently moved, Elon Musk talking about moving one of his plants, and the Joe Rogan moved with his podcast, Ben Shapiro.
Ben Shapiro is moving also.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people moving. And, it just sort of this whole thing of just tax. So, it's fair share, undefined, just say tax more. I don't know. What do you think about that, Tim?
Well, have you seen the prices of Utopia these days? Utopia is way up there. So they bought Utopia, and it was a little higher price than they expected it to be, and now they're wondering how to pay for it, and of course they can't, because they can't print their own money. But if they could, believe me, they would. But they have.
And that's the state. Just to interject, that's the states that can't predict.
I'm talking the states, exactly, But fortunately for the states who don't have Federal Reserve to print their own money with, they have the federal government. That's especially if they have somebody that's in their same party in there to give the go-ahead to more debt to pay for their profligate spending. And so, yes, that restraint on states has gone away, and now they will suck on the big breast of the federal government, not even the federal government, but the federal government's central bank, and will therefore not have to worry about this profligate spending at all.
Yeah. And this whole nonsense about raising the minimum wage to $15. The minimum wage is one of the biggest job killers we have probably the biggest job killers we have in the United States, especially for minority people in the United States. The minimum wage, you could go back and look at the history. When we had no minimum wage, black unemployment and white unemployment was almost equivalent to each other. But the day the minimum wage came in, you started to see the disparity. Right now, in some communities, youth unemployment in some black communities and some Hispanic communities is up in 30–40%. That kind of stuff. And then we just wonder why these people, having nothing to do, they end up in difficult crime situations. And we wonder why. The minimum wage is the biggest job killer and one of the most damaging things we have in society right now. And look at what Joe Biden is talking about. He's going to raise it. He's going to make it nice and wonderful. Okay? And the other thing too that is also destructive, you see this Buy American thing? Now, I don't have any problem with the United States producing wonderful products and we all want to buy it. Okay? But I must freely choose that. Okay, that's what I want, but I want to be freely able to choose that. I don't want some government telling me if I have a nice, wonderful product made in France or made in Canada and I cannot buy it because I am an American citizen. I have to buy something here in America that is of less quality. And Trump also has this policy also, okay, which I despise. I think you know that I despise. So I don't want the government telling me what my choices should be when I spend my hard-earned dollars. This Buy America. Oh God, come on, please save that book, save that nonsense, please.
To jump in on the minimum wage thing too, as well. I mean, we are in a situation where everybody has massively lost jobs in this country. I mean, we have loss of jobs and loss of businesses, and the last thing we want to do, because in the end, what a minimum wage is it's a barrier to employment. If two people want to come together and voluntarily engage in a work relationship with one another, and that happens to be at a lower rate than $15 an hour, then essentially the government is coming in and saying, no, you cannot engage in this relationship. That is essentially what a minimum wage is. So it is a barrier to jobs and employment, not a creator of jobs and employment. So essentially in this atmosphere where lockdowns, the government has literally come down and killed many jobs with a lockdown policy where it gave people no choice on how to respond to COVID, just told us we have to lock down certain businesses to their to their fatality, essentially. And now we are putting a barrier in place. So the economic illiteracy, and I urge anybody who's watching this, just look up price floors and price ceilings online. Price controls, essentially, is what we're talking about here. And you can find out that almost every economist is against price controls. You may find a few who, kind of try and make exceptions for specific things or the other. Look up general price controls, and you're going to find that it's a bad thing in economics. It leads to inefficiency and waste.
Well, the minimum wage makes lower paying jobs illegal. So,
yes.
you want to make jobs illegal, vote for Biden or, support Biden's lunacy, his economic imbecility. And Jason, I mean, you will not find any economist, well, unless he's complete nutcase.
No, I wouldn't say that. Krugman, I think Krugman supports minimum wage. That jacket. Oh God, Lord, what's wrong with you today? That imbecile.
Yeah. Which imbecile was this?
Economic Krugman.
Krugman, yes.
Krugman.
Krugman. Oh.
Yeah.
Our friend. Yeah.
Sorry, I mispronounced his name. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. Gosh, I can't think of his first name. Anyway.
Paul Krugman.
Paul, yes, Paul. That's
Krugman.
Right.
Yeah. I guess okay. All right, I stand corrected then. Yeah, you're right. Oh gosh, yeah. It's I don't know where to begin. You really have to be. This is the issue with education, where you get no education in economics. So you have people that buy into this thing as if there's no downside, no unintended consequences with price controls, essentially. And it's just every time it's including Nixon, a Republican.
Right.
Every time it's been done, it's just been a disaster. Now, what they're going to do is, we'll look, city A, like Seattle, for example, a high rent district, okay? Cost of living is really high there in Seattle, on the coast, of a major port on the Pacific Rim, and it's got a totally distorted economic base compared, and not distorted for the wrong reasons, but it's a distorted economy because it's got such a high cost of living, right? Okay, so you're going to be able to raise the minimum wage there and not see as much of a downside as you would in, say, Alabama or in, just Idaho, Utah, you name it, in Dallas and so on, because the cost of living is already so high that the lowest wages are already naturally up there because they have to be, or nobody would work. Okay, nobody would be able to afford to live there and work. So people like to show off these supposed successes of this raising of the minimum wage when it just ain't there. That's not why you didn't see a drop off in employment. It's because they were already being paid almost that, or in some cases higher than that.
Higher than that, yes.
Yeah. Well, not to mention that, but I mean, if you go and you look at, I believe it's Bureau of Labor Statistics, and you can look this up, essentially it is less than, I think I know it's less than 5%. It may even be less than 3 or 4%.
Okay. Yeah. You got to look at it a couple of different ways.
Yeah.
You can look at it. Okay. So it's 2%, by the way. And I think the 2% figure, and it may be even lower, but you take all people working. Okay. You take people that are working for a salary out of the equation. So you got wage earners, and then you've got people that are below a certain age group that are wage earners. Okay. Even in that statistic, it's really low, the number of people that make minimum wage, that are paid minimum wage already. I can't remember. I've looked at those stats in the past, but it's been a while, and they may be a little bit different, but it's a low percentage. It's just, it's because people start off, they're there for a little while, and then they get to doing something, or they stay there and get skilled and they get worth more, and so they get paid more than minimum wage.
Well, and the point I was trying to make too about bringing that up is, if such a tiny percent of the population is actually controlled by that, it really shows that the market does not require a minimum wage. The minimum wage, people who are making less than whatever that minimum wage
should be that.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. That should be the minimum wage.
Yes.
Yeah, because there's all kinds of reasons that people take jobs. I mean, you think about an internship, and somebody may be taking a job just to gain the skills to make more money later, right? And so, I mean, these are common practices. I mean, most college-educated people may take a free, an unpaid internship just to gain some of these job skills that will get them a good job in the future. So that, it's really silly, to think that that we need this, but it's just terrible. And then you think too about the big push in this for unionization of many jobs as well, which is part of the AB5 thing that has gone on in California as well, trying to crack down on gig workers to make sure that they have constraints that'll make them easier to unionize essentially in the future. And there's a big push as well nationally by the Democrats to push that out. But these are all barriers to getting people back to work and getting people productive. Exactly. And, it just, and the reason, by the way, that most people are making more than minimum wage is because in the end, what dictates what you get paid is mostly your productivity. It's not an edict by somebody. Yeah. So, if your productivity does not demand that, then you've essentially eliminated yourself from the possibility of employment. So. But
there's a bigger adverse effect of the minimum wage that we probably haven't touched on. When you look at a high schooler who will have to be paid the minimum wage, there's a big intangible thing of getting up in the morning and reporting to a job on time, and learning some of the things of interacting with people in a professional or semi-professional environment. All these intangibles are destroyed because you have a minimum wage and certain people cannot participate in these sort of skill learning activities because these intangibles are valuable down the road. They may not pay off right at this moment, but down the road they'll be valuable. And these are the skills that are not being learned by a whole swath of people because we have a minimum wage. They cannot find jobs to learn these skills about getting up in the morning, dressing up, as best they can to appear for work, how they present themselves on the job, all these sort of things which are so valuable in terms of your success. These things are lost to a certain sector of the population because of this minimum wage.
Well, one other area I wanted to touch on too, as well, since we talked about, but it has to do with, Biden wants a mandatory mask policy across the country, and I don't believe he currently has the authority to do that as an executive. I mean, when he does become president, he won't have the authority to do that, but he wants that, which is, you talk about invasive. I mean, the idea that you could actually tell everybody in every state that you have to wear masks and when, and especially when you hear some governors telling people you have to wear a mask in between bites at a meal, where's that going? And I mean,
where does it end? Where does it end?
Yes, well, I think the hypocrisy of some of this too. I mean, we've had debates in the past about, say, state driver's license, and maybe a Muslim woman does not want to take her veil off for the picture. And we've actually, I believe, made exceptions to that. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe we've had debates about making exceptions for that. And now we're going to tell everybody that you have to wear a mask and your liberty is completely unimportant. To me, this is the same crowd that's telling us that essentially, that we had to respect the individual in that case where they wanted to wear a veil for a state driver's license, which is what you're using to identify somebody.
Yeah.
Then in this case, they're telling us that no, if you aren't comfortable in a mask, well, too bad. We're just going to mask everybody in the country.
We're going to impose it.
Yeah, it's.
But these people start off where Karl Marx started. The ends justify the means. They don't care how they get to their power grabbing world. They just want to make sure they get there. Once they get there, we'll have this utopia. So here we are, where we are adults. We cannot make our own choices. We cannot decide what risks we're going to take to manage our own lives. These people, these utopians, they think they can tell us. The ends justify the means. They think they can take away our liberties. They think they can do whatever the hell they want as long as it gets to their ends, not ours, theirs. They could destroy our livelihoods as long as it gets to their ends. This is what is going on. We have to stop this, and we have to stop it soon. Otherwise, we'll never have America that we hope for.
Wow. Yeah. What can I say?
But I want to on the list. Tim, are you finished? I'm sorry. Tim, are you finished?
No.
I don't know. Nothing better than that, of course.
Well, say it, man. Come on, man. Come on. You never know. Come on, man. Come on.
Well, I'm just going to agree with you, and it's not our utopia; it's their utopia, because we've seen in the last show that they don't have to abide by the rules that they make, and so
exactly.
What do they care if they have they could have a mask mandate that we have to wear the mask sleeping, taking a shower, or having sex? But they wouldn't have to abide by it, just us. I don't know how they're going to enforce that, especially the sex part. But
I remember there was a movie, The Naked Gun. I don't know if you guys saw that, but there was a scene where Leslie Nielsen tells Priscilla Presley, yes, or that he practices safe sex, and then they go into the next scene, and you see two people completely in these body condoms rolling around.
Pretty darn safe. Yep. Okay.
Well, we've gotten to that point in our show where we try to, our Knucklehead Noise Patrol, where we try and end off with something, just some insane noises coming out of usually a politician out there. And in this case, we had Trump talking about, removing some of the troops from Afghanistan and Iraq prior to his, leaving office. And I mean, I'm not sure if he believes he's leaving office yet, but regardless, he said at the last minute.
He doesn't believe it. He doesn't believe it yet. No.
But he's going to reduce the troop size in those countries by about half. So he's not completely pulling out the troops, but he's pulling out around half of the troops in both those countries. And so Tammy Duckworth, who I believe is a congresswoman on the Democrat side, she said, "We want our troops to come home, but let's not bring them home in body bags. That's potentially what's going to happen if this president gets his way and puts his own political timeline ahead of national security." So bringing troops
Tammy,
home.
Yeah, exactly. Tammy's mentally retarded because they've been coming home in body bags and these numerous fool's errands in the Middle East for the last 20 years. And we're in this one in Afghanistan for 20 years now. And it's beyond ridiculous. And we've lost, and it's like news to Tammy, we've lost that war. Okay. We have lost ground and hey, who cares? No one had a strategy to begin with. And didn't
Obama say we're going to bring the troops home when he came into office? I thought
he did. You're right, exactly.
And where are we now?
Then he had right. Then somebody took him into the corner and gave him a little lecture, and then he had the surge right after that, and 35,000 or so new troops went in there. Anyway, and guess what? We still lost. So it's just ludicrous that this person. I wish Trump would have done this in his first week of office. He should have pulled everybody out and said, "Good luck, you're on your own." And the Taliban would have taken over the rest of the country. They own most of it already. They control most of it. It's just this puppet dictator we put in place, this idiot that's running things now, supposedly, that's running a little limited area in Afghanistan now. It's just ridiculous. And the WAPU report, I suppose everyone should be familiar with that, where they had uncovered all these people lying to the American public about everything regarding Afghanistan and how their so-called victories were nothing but, and everything is just a complete sham and a disgraceful evidence of the power the military-industrial complex has over most of our leaders, and especially
speaking of an endless stay there, unfortunately our show has to have an end. We can't go on forever like our military presence overseas. So I have to call it there. But thank you all for joining Libertarian Counterpoint podcast, and you can catch more of our shows at libertariancounterpoint.com, and we hope to see you in our future shows. And thanks for joining us.